This manifests in worst case scenario as autism in little kids, and it manifests as worst case scenario as really bad Alzheimer's disease in the elderly.
Licensed medical people that are supposed to know everything, but they couldn't really help me. And in fact, I know why the Hatter was mad. Severe headaches and menstrual issues. Every single symptom that I had was on that list. Kind of made a really impulsive decision to up and leave the life that I had and marry this guy and move to Denver. Very impulsive and in hindsight, very destructive. Is probably the worst decision I ever made in my adult life.
Mine
But
left a certain path of destruction too. Andy used to say, "Oh, we sure do find toxic sweeties."
I can see junior high bad decisions. I can see how it affected me in childhood. People that have had to move, they've moved out to airstreams in the middle of Arizona to get away from toxins of the modern environment. And I I worried that I was headed that direction. That
I worried that I was headed in the direction of dying with dementia like everybody else in my family. All right. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching from all over the world. This is Rebecca Lee from Maybe It's Mercury, teaching people how to detox heavy metals without getting hurt. Today I'm talking to Molly Flowers, who chelated with Andy Cutler protocol for 10 years, so I think she has a whole lot to tell us. Molly lives in Virginia, where she works as an astrologer, and she also describes herself as a small town tarot card reader. During the season, she grows and sells cut flowers too. And between 2015 and 2018, when she was in Denver, she attended the Nutritional Therapy Institute because she wanted to learn about the science behind detoxing. So welcome to Maybe It's Mercury, Molly. People like to hear rags to riches stories, but I think stories about being really, really sick to all better are a lot more interesting.
really is a rags to riches tale.
Yeah,
Anyway,
well, yeah. So I'm going to start by asking you to say something about what was going on with your health mentally and physically before you started chelating. What brought you to this?
well, in hindsight, I had been in decline for a number of years. I started to chelate in 2014. The picture all came together for me in late 2013. And then 2014, I was able to have my mercury fillings replaced, removed, so that I could start the process of detox. But looking back and learning about it, I can see that my symptom patterns started way before then in
Yeah.
childhood and then progressively got worse. And it wasn't until I was in my early 40s that my health actually started to get better over time rather than get worse over time. So, but the symptoms that caught my attention and got me looking into it, the Google search that opened the door for me was about tinnitus.
About what
Because
tips? Okay.
tinnitus, yeah, my tinnitus, however you say it,
Yeah.
it was so bad. I've always had it. I've always had some degree. I still have some degree, but when in 2013, 2014, it was like this constant like creaking sound in my ear. It was very, very loud and extremely annoying, and it was driving me bananas. And in fact, my first entry in my Mercury journal is, I know why the Hatter was mad because the tinnitus was driving him bananas. So it was actually the tinnitus. And then when I looked up the tinnitus possible causes of that, mercury poisoning was amongst them. And that was already on my radar. So I Googled again symptoms of mercury poisoning. And I went through a few different resources and I realized that every single symptom that I had was on that list.
Right.
Chemical sensitivity, bad, severe headaches and body pain, I had menstrual issues, irregularity would make it worse. Probably the most debilitating was the chemical sensitivity. I had like postural orthostatic, when you stand up and your world goes woozy and you have to like hold on to the walls for a second so you won't fall
Right.
down. That's kind of where I was with that. And let's see, I had to pull up my symptoms list because you forget when you feel better how bad you felt before.
Yep, you do.
So, yeah. So if anybody's out there just really struggling now, like you can get better and you won't even remember how bad you are struggling now. I have emotional issues. Explosive anger or weeping when I get stressed out is usually how it would
Yeah,
go.
I had that too.
Anxiety, post-traumatic stress, depression, moodiness, feeling really drained when people come over, not really having any motivation to get up and do things. And it was all just really weird things. And I would go and see medical people, like licensed medical people that are supposed to know everything, but they couldn't really help me. And in fact, I got accused once of drug seeking, of like
Right,
faking pain to get drugs, which is not me at all. Like, I don't even want to take drugs. It's like I'm just so desperate to get out of pain. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. It was Dr. Google diagnosed me. I guess I diagnosed myself with Dr. Google's help.
when did Dr. Google start? Because that's how I figured things out too. I mean, that's how I found the color protocol with Dr. Google. But,
Yeah.
before Dr. Google, it must have been terrible because, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Google.
And then I read Daniel Forsyth's book,
All right, the
The
Mercury
Mercury
Diary. Yeah,
Diaries.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Sunshine.
that I think was a gentle introduction to the Cutler Protocol because the next book I got after that was Amalgam Illness, which is not an easy read, but
No.
reading about the protocol in story format was really helpful for me too because I kind of got an idea of how it fits into one's life and kind of how to work within that protocol and like bring the rest of the pieces together, like the other supports, supplements, and techniques that help with the symptoms.
So, so it was the first book you read was Sunshine book. That was the one. I read that book too to start out. Did you ever read the ones by Diagnosis Mercury by
I don't,
Dr.
I don't
Yeah,
think
that's
I did.
by
Yeah.
a doctor, by an MD. And there's another one that I read, which was called uh, Mercury, the Undiagnosed Epidemic.
I did read that one.
Yeah, that was a really good one too.
Mm.
Yeah, Andy liked that one. So that was how you decided you were dealing with Mercury. That answers my second question. But how did you find the Andy Cutler protocol? Oh, through Danny's book, huh? Yeah. Did
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much that's how. When I first, when the light bulb came on that it was Mercury, I did a lot of stupid stuff and made myself worse. I
what? I
went
think
out
it's
to the
important for
Indian
him.
restaurant and they were like, take cilantro, take cilantro. So I got a
Mhm.
big helping of it was like those bready Middle Eastern things. I can't think of the name of them. Falafels. I got an order of falafels with a big side of cilantro
Fresh
pesto, thinking I
cilantro.
was
Yeah.
helping myself,
How did
and
that go?
not well. I was in absolute hell. That's the thing is when you're down so far bad and then you do something that pushes you lower, then you are in absolute agony hell
Yeah.
for a
Did that
while.
wear off on its own? I think people would like to hear because a lot
So,
of people do stuff like that. They wind up in our group.
mhm.
Did you just get better on your own? What did you do to get better from crashing yourself with cilantro?
I eventually it kind of like worked its way through my system, I
Right.
think. It was usually back in the day like a 2 or 3 day process if I would tox myself out, if I would be exposed to air fresheners or strong perfumes or something. It would be like a days long process of getting back to my baseline, which wasn't that great
Yes,
to
it
begin
says.
with,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers are pretty familiar with that two
Oh
or three
gosh, yeah.
day, like getting
What
knocked
other
out by
terrible mistakes
something.
did you make?
Oh my gosh. Let's
Lots of
see.
them, huh?
That was the worst one. After that, I started to read. That's the one thing that I really appreciate about myself is that I'm a reader and I'm a learner. And once I started to learn more, and once I started to read Dr. Cutler's work and get involved in the groups, then I started to realize, oh, well, that cilantro was a bad move. And then I started to follow the protocol a little bit better. I'm sure there's other things, but the thing that I remember the most was just like how hard it is to keep fragrances out of your life, you know?
Oh, right, yeah.
That's very hard, and people around you get mad at you, and
I never had that problem, but we certainly hear about it enough.
yeah, like it's very isolating, it's socially isolating, and
So
you know,
did that resolve with chelation?
yeah.
How long did that take?
I would say like everything was pretty dicey. I had my fillings removed in 2 sessions and I interviewed
How many
dentists.
feelings did you have?
I just had 4 big ones in my back molars and then a few like little ones around kind of on the sides of the teeth. And so I didn't have any root canals or anything like that, or crowns, or I didn't have to worry about any of that. So I was really lucky.
That was a
But I did
blessing.
interview the dentist first, and I asked them lots of questions like, how do you, my favorite question was, how do you protect yourself when you're removing mercury? Because I want to know that they take it seriously. And I found a dentist that's like, I wear this respirator and my assistant wears a mask. And I was like, okay, I know that she knows this is not something to mess around with.
Did you have
And
any repercussions from doing that work? Like some people get floored by just doing, the dental remediation. Did anything bad happen to you? I mean, I felt nothing from it.
I actually felt a lot better
Oh,
after
did
the
you now?
first one. I did. Because another one of my problems that I haven't mentioned yet is that I was extremely sensitive to electronics, the cell phone and the
Okay, yeah.
computer and the
I didn't have that
clothes
either, but
dryer and
Andy Cutler
yeah,
did.
lucky you. Yeah, the sensitivities just knock you right out and it caused a lot of friction in my family and like it's 12 years later and they still haven't fully forgiven me and that's
Oh,
part of
yeah.
the reason I'm getting divorced now. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
I was sensitive to everything, and that resolved very quickly after my first set of after they did the tops first and then the bottoms. After the top ones were removed, it was like, oh. And I realized like those chunks of mercury were acting like little antennas and they were like picking
Yeah.
up the electromagnetic fields from all these
So people say, yeah,
gizmos of modern life and
yeah.
that was really great. And then once I started chelating, like after about 20 rounds, I got my brain back. Like I could concentrate again. I could
20
focus my
rounds. That'll make
attention.
people happy to hear that.
That was after about 20 for me. I started with the DMSA like you're supposed to, and I did the DMSA for 3 months before I switched to ALA.
So
And then I
you did
found,
the teeth and the 3, 4 days wait, then the DMSA for 3 months, then okay.
yeah, yeah, I
You
did all
fell
that
into the
according to
real
protocol.
traditional. Yeah.
Yeah. I did find that once I started on ALA that there was something about my metabolism that made it work better if I spaced my doses at 2 hours instead of three.
Yeah,
And
that happens.
years after that, I was able to extend it to the normal time frame. I think my metabolism was fixed at that point, and I wasn't metabolizing it so fast, so I could space them out to three. But that was much later. I think now I chelated every week those first few years, pretty much every week. Now I only chelate when my tinnitus gets bad. That's when I kind of know like the mercury is starting to circulate again. Like it's coming up from deeper tissues, it's getting into circulation, it's starting to affect my nervous system. So I go
Yeah.
ahead and do a round, but they're kind of a pain, so I don't do them all the time anymore.
They're like maintenance rounds. You do them like
Yeah.
once in a
Yeah.
while. Me
Right.
too. Yeah. When I feel that I'm getting neurotic, I will do a round of mercury chelation.
Yeah, that's interesting. Everybody has their own like
Yeah,
self-signal
what
that
triggers it for you? Yes, that's
yeah.
true. So did you get involved with any of the other practitioners and any of the other or did you any of the other protocols that are out there? I mean, I come across people all the time who, spent thousands of dollars with this person or that person and, nothing happened or they got really sick before they glommed onto Andy, who really wasn't much of a marketer, he was just sort of there obscurely on the sidelines.
Yeah, and yet the group just keeps growing and growing. I think when I joined the group, it had like 900 members, and now it has multiple tens of thousands of
Yeah, it's
members.
95,000 now. Were you in the Yahoo groups, the original Yahoo groups?
No, I didn't find you all until 2014, and I think you were all on
We'd
Facebook
already
then.
started Facebook. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, and I didn't do any of the other practitioners. I didn't really do any of the other protocols. I did buy a tube or a little vial of IMD because
IMD. Oh,
I read
that's
the
yeah.
yeah, that's the Quicksilver the Quicksilver and
Doesn't it have our lipoic acid in it?
not the IMD. The IMD is strictly a
A
binder.
binder. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that doesn't hurt.
So, and I bought it in 2014 and I actually still have that same vial. I haven't used it up yet. I
Was it helpful in any way?
think it might have been. I think it might have been. Sometimes when you're on round, you can kind of feel the mercury circulating, and I would use binders to kind of relieve the symptoms of that, to kind of get it out of my bloodstream and into my gut so it can go out. And I feel like the IMD was helpful for that, but really my favorite binder that I use is activated charcoal.
But that doesn't go into your bloodstream. I mean, it's whole.
No, but your bloodstream travels into your gut, and so
Okay.
it can pick up stuff out of your blood and hold it there in your gut until you can poop it out.
So you learned about that in Denver, huh?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I learned it all in Denver. I didn't understand before, and I actually moving to Denver in hindsight was a decision that was highly influenced by my emotional lability, which was which had Mercury at the root of it. Because I kind of made a really impulsive decision to up and leave the life that I had and marry this guy and move to Denver from where I was in Virginia at the
Gee,
time.
I did that too.
You did?
Yeah, yeah, similar. I didn't move to Denver, but I just dropped everything and yeah,
Yeah.
impulsively moved on.
I think that's a Mad Hatter symptom. These it's very, very impulsive and in hindsight, very destructive is probably the worst decision I ever made in my adult life. But
Yeah, mine left a certain path of destruction too, and it
mm,
didn't work out either.
yeah. Yeah, so in hindsight, that was 2010. So that was 4 years before my symptoms got so bad that I figured out what was going on. But yeah, like I said, in hindsight, I can
Okay.
go back, I can see junior high bad decisions, I can see how it affected me in childhood. I can
You
see it
think you
all
got, when
now.
did you first get when do you think you got your first exposure? How old were you?
I've been trying to figure that out. I was somewhere around 8 or 9 years old when
I,
the
I
feelings
always say
started.
8 too. My mother just revered dentists and doctors too.
Mine too, yeah.
Yeah. And then we traveled, so we got a hell of a lot of those products.
Hmm.
Yeah. But did you find yourself in school and as a child and as a teenager to be kind of an outsider?
Yeah.
Me
Hmm.
too.
I
Yeah.
had a lot of social insecurity.
Yeah.
And somehow that got twisted and distorted. And in hindsight, I can see that I acted like a jerk and a bully a lot of times.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, and
Was more your victim.
yeah, it was more the victim and just the distortive patterns of thought that I feel like come from the Mercury. Like I
Yeah.
feel a lot more secure within myself now. And when I'm around people, I don't wonder like, am I doing everything right like I used to? I used to have just so much fear of people judging me or thinking poorly of me. And now it's like I couldn't give a crap. It's all about, who do I want to go out and interact with, and who do I like? And I don't have those same kinds of worries and anxieties that I had all throughout my childhood.
All my friends had Asperger's syndrome. In
Yeah.
retrospect, seems like.
Yeah, I always thought when I first heard of Asperger's, I thought that fit me too. I thought I felt pretty characteristic of
Yeah, and I
that.
think I had it. Or I think, to a certain extent, you always are like that because, you have all those patterns that you experience throughout your life. So you always, I mean, the kids with autism now, the ones that can function and talk and communicate, um, talk about it being their their superpower, and are scared that if they detox, they'll lose it. And I always tell them, you're not going to lose it. You're always going to remain,
Yeah.
have that particular point of view that being toxic with Mercury has developed in you. And maybe it is a superpower in some way. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think every trauma, every bad experience that you go through, if you survive it, ultimately has that silver lining because it does teach you
Adds to your
something.
wisdom, it adds to
Yeah.
wisdom. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Something I really clung to. I read like I spent all day. There was nothing else I could do. I had no attention span for my work or
Yeah,
anything else
yeah,
other than, trying to figure out this Mercury stuff back in the
yeah.
day.
You become a zealot, as one of my friends said.
I became a zealot, absolutely. And one of the things that I clung to was somebody describing this emotional difficulty interacting with others, and the friends that they had back then, and how they had kind of been isolated from their social group, and then they got better and they came back, and he said that people don't believe that you can change when you're like that. They believe that that is immutable, but it's not. Like it's the disease. You can get better and you can have normal interactions and not have so much social anxiety.
Yeah, well, it's a
I'm living
really
proof of that.
interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, if you talk to anybody that I knew in my teens, in my 20s, even in my 30s, like I'm just so much more relaxed and happy now.
Yeah. I notice that the younger generation, those young people now, the ones that are in their early 30s and before, there's a huge amount of anxiety disorder and this and that. I mean, I don't know what happened to them. I guess it was the schedule that they got, but there's a lot of mercury toxicity there. There's a lot of really weird, weirdness. Mercury is, you know, weirdness. You're
It
weird,
is
you're
weirdness.
mercury toxic, and you're attracted to other weird people.
Mm-hmm.
Andy used to say, "Oh, we sure do find toxic sweeties." And he discovered from looking at thousands of hair tests, and he didn't talk about this a lot because it was just sounded too strange, that toxic people are attracted to other toxic people and get married.
Mm. Oh, that's true in my case. Yeah.
I feel great in mine too. Yeah. You're attracted by subtle psychological cues.
Mm-hmm.
He said you could walk into a crowded room and look across it, and you could pick out another Mercury person right away.
Mm.
And another way you can tell that a person has Mercury poisoning is you like them a lot.
Hmm. Oh, interesting.
He
Like
used
you're
to
weird
tell
in
me
the same
that.
way I'm weird. Cool.
Yeah, we were weird together. Yeah. So how did the Detox I mean, I think it's really encouraging for people to hear that it only took you 20 rounds to get rid of, was it your tinnitus that
Oh
result?
no, I mean that was just when I was able to focus my attention. At the time,
Okay, well, that's
I
a
was
huge
building
thing.
websites with WordPress, and before 20, I would get on my computer to try to do something to my website, and I would just get lost. I would stare at it, and I couldn't remember what I was
Yeah.
doing, and I couldn't, I just I couldn't, it was overwhelming. Just these really simple things are overwhelming because I couldn't hold a train of thought.
Yeah, you
So
forget the beginning of
after
the
20,
paragraph by the time you get to the end. It's
yeah, I forgot the beginning by the time I get to the end. Exactly. But
yeah,
after 20, I could focus again, and that was huge for me. Like I still had the sensitivity and the chemicals and
right,
everything
right,
else and the
right,
pain and
right.
the migraines and everything, but I could focus, and
And
that was huge. And
you
that's kind of
stuck
how,
with it. You stuck with it
yeah.
to, I mean, Andy did those a year and a half, I think, until he got his intellect back, and he had quite the intellect, and then he stopped. And ultimately he died of a heart attack.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Andy talking about being able to drink a Coca-Cola because I had food sensitivities too. That's something I didn't mention is I had bad food sensitivities for a while, for a year or two. All I could eat was like bland, bland meat and overcooked broccoli.
Oh gosh.
And beets, I ate a lot of beets, and like I'd have a smoothie for breakfast, maybe an egg, and I'd have a bland broccoli and like half a hamburger for dinner, and that was,
Was that from the multiple chemical sensitivity, or was it, do you think, from your gut dysbiosis, which is another big thing with mercury toxic people?
I think I had some leaky gut issues and probably dysbiosis, and I had a lot of gut problems. I think I had a lot of mercury in my gut as well,
Hmm.
and that shifts
Did you
your.
ever did you ever have any lead?
I think I might have had a little lead.
Because in my
I
case, I've chelated with just lipoic acid for the 10 years, and now I'm stuck with lead. I'm dealing with lead.
mm,
And so I always tell people now to do combo rounds just in
mm.
case. But you look good.
Yeah,
I
that's a
don't
good
think,
idea.
like a lot of people just have mercury.
Yeah.
Not everybody. I mean, it seems like everybody's got mercury poisoning, but not everybody has lead poisoning.
I think my exposure to mercury is a bit higher, but I know that I've always liked really old houses and
Yeah.
old, so I probably did pick up some lead here and there as
Yeah,
well.
here and there. Well, it seems to manifest a lot as gut problems
Mm.
and
Lead
anger
does.
management issues. So if you're not
Mm.
dealing with a lot of I wouldn't worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm feisty. I've always been a little feisty. I'm an Aries, but I wouldn't say I have anger issues. I'd say I'm appropriately angry at times.
Appropriately angry is good. No, the people who throw things against the wall and wind up in jail. There's a lot of people in jail who have lead issues. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that.
Mhm. I can see how they go there too. So
Yeah.
20 rounds and you were started to get better. Was it a straight shot from there? I mean, why did you go so long? 10 years. That's what I did too. 10 years.
Yeah,
What?
well, I mean, when I talk to people about the process, I tell them like if you're looking from this week to next week, I did a round and then the round's over. Do I feel better? Like, not necessarily. But if I go where I am now to where I am 6 months ago, I'm significantly better. So that was enough to keep me going.
Enough to
Plus,
keep
I
you going.
believed in the protocol and I could see that it was working because I was experiencing, um, the sensations that I was supposed to experience
Yeah.
according to what I was reading,
Yes.
the redistribution at the end. And sometimes during the rounds, I would feel so clear. And then the redistribution would come and be like, oh, I'm back down again. But I could tell it was working because of that. I was, watching what was in the toilet, so I could kind of see,
You
what
do
was
look in the
coming
toilet a
through.
lot.
Yeah, I know that at some point my gallbladder got blocked or something because my poops turned almost white, like they were
Oh dear.
so light, and I was like, "What the heck is that?" And I realized that it's bile that makes your poop brown, and that obviously my bile's not flowing, so I
Not
need
coming
to address
through.
that. And Yeah, so it's just a process. Like I think that you've said before, it's like playing whack-a-mole. You know, you gotta get this thing and then this thing and then that thing, and things are always popping up because the core issue is, and once I understood this, another light bulb came on. The core issue is your body can't move minerals around very well.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so I was, so you're constantly playing this whack-a-mole game until you can kind of get things flowing again.
Right. So you're a lot better now. Do you
A
think you're
month.
all better?
I would probably estimate that I'm about 90% better. If I chelated more, I could probably bring down the tinnitus even more. But as far as my quality of life, I'm where I want to be, you know? I had very, very poor quality of life when I started, and now it's like I move through the world like a normal human being. Whereas when I was really sick, there was no way. It was like I had to have this protective bubble around myself so that I wouldn't be in symptom hell, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I've heard of people that have had to move, they've moved out to airstreams in the middle of Arizona to get away from all of the
Yes.
scents and the modern toxins of the modern environment. And I I worried that I was headed that direction. I really did.
I worried that I was headed in the direction of dying with dementia like everybody else in my family.
Oh, yeah, that is a
And
sad
I think
state.
that people, I mean, this manifests, I mean, that was a big insight for me that this manifests in worst case scenario as autism in little kids. And it manifests as worst case scenario as really bad Alzheimer's disease in the elderly. And as you approach old age, because your body does all these things to keep you in homeostasis. So it just, like it's constantly putting things and moving things and keeping things in balance. And it's a big job when you have a complete metabolic poison racketing around inside you. And
Yeah.
as you get older, it becomes more and more difficult for the poor thing to compensate. And people start to really fall apart. And I think and if you look around in society, it's really, really clear, but nobody seems to know. It's just like
Yeah. Yeah, that's what's most frustrating because once you have the eyes to see it, you see it
you
everywhere.
see it everywhere.
But
I see it with dogs.
it's so hard to get other people to understand it because, I'm not a licensed medical person and the whole licensed medical realm just
Ignores it.
exactly. It's like they're focused on the symptoms and managing and creating workarounds for all the autism that is cropping up
Yeah.
and it's
Well,
sad.
maybe the paradigm's going to shift and we'll be justified and we'll get our 15 minutes of fame. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, that would be great. And the world could heal and
World could
society could
heal.
become a bit
Yeah.
more peaceful, which would be grand.
A little less fat shit and more peaceful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Molly, thank you very much. I think that was a really interesting talk, and I hope a lot of people get to listen to it and encourage. I mean, it was Georgia in my support group that said that the thing when she was going through the worst part of her journey, she started to recover a bit now. The worst part of her journey that she would love listening to interviews and she would hang on every word. So
Mm.
I hope this is one of those interviews where people find it and hang on every word.
Yeah, me too. If you're out there suffering, you can get better. It's possible. Get that
Yes.
mercury out because mercury is the root cause of root causes.
That's what I think. It's not
Yeah.
just one other thing along with a lot of
Mhm.
other stuff. No, it's a root cause.
Yeah. Yeah,
All
and
right.
it's very, very hard to get better if you still have mercury, if you haven't
No,
detoxed.
it's almost impossible. People always talk about, well, some guy approached me the other day and said, well, maybe I need, my practitioner says I need to spend 2 years healing my gut before I can start chelation. I said, "Nah, your gut's never going to get better.
Yeah,
Like, just
right.
jump right in, do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, just do it. All you have to lose is a little bit of sleep.
Yeah, and if it's not mercury, nothing bad is going to happen. You're just taking like a fabulous antioxidant.
Right,
But
that's true.
but it is mercury. And something
Probably.
good will happen to you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. If it is Mercury and you keep up with it, you will get better. But give it months.
You
Don't
will get
expect to be better
better
after your first round. Don't judge it that way. Give it months and
months
good
and
luck.
months. Sometimes. Well, some people. Did you notice this dump phase? Did you go through a dump phase?
I think I went through a couple of different dump phases. I think I
Yeah,
went
yeah.
through one at the
Roller
beginning, and
coaster.
then I think one came up a bit later that I wrote about in my notes. Then and I just kind of felt like, oh, I'm crappy again. Oh, this is bad again. And but yeah, I got through that, and
Do you
it's
have
all
a
good.
I was never even aware of a dump phase. I mean, it was just so awful that, I just it was awful at the beginning and it started to get better over time. And that was it. Um, do you have a place, a website or anything like that that you'd like people to know about?
Sure, you can go to mollysastrology.com if you're interested in that kind of thing. And I have a few free calendar goodies and that sort of thing.
Okay, mollysastrology.com. Sounds great.
mollysastrology.com.
All right, Molly, I'm going to stop recording.